All right, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see some new faces here tonight and some regulars, so I appreciate everyone coming out. If this is the first time you've joined us, whether it's in person or online, or if you're watching this in a recording, we've been doing a series for almost 10 months now, I guess, on the CLP program and really being intentional about bringing education to business owners, mostly to foremen, leaders within an organization, and kind of breaking down that whole CLP course and kind of making it kind of normal. And then really, hopefully, you guys can take stuff away and actually implement to your business. So I've had the pleasure of doing most of these courses. The great thing tonight is that you don't have to listen to me all night. So we have a guest speaker tonight, which is great. And I'm going to introduce him in a bit. But yeah, we're so thankful you're here. We're so thankful that you've joined us. And again, for the people online, thank you so much. So again, the unlocking your full potential, business potential is the theme of these events. So let's get going. So I'm not going to force everyone to do this. Typically what we've done is if I start to see some cliques, I'll force everyone to move tables, but everyone's been pretty good. Everyone's spread out pretty good tonight, so I'm not going to force everyone to do that. So we will stop about halfway through and get a break so you can get some food, get another drink and stuff like that. So we'll probably stop around maybe 7, just after 7, we'll stop for a break. Okay, so again, I said my name is Grant Harrison. I'm from Nexter Consulting. Been in the industry most of my life. High school, went to Humber College. I got my landscape technician, worked for a bunch of companies, and now we own a consulting business that specializes in helping landscape contractors. So again, we love giving education. So we kind of have lots of good stories from past contractors or who we're dealing with and all that type of stuff. So yes, I have the pleasure of standing up here and sharing some stuff with you as far as that goes. If this is your first event. So yeah, so let's keep going. So what's coming up? Like I said, this is a series. So next month, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a recap of all the CLM courses that we've already done before. So if you missed something, maybe you missed one of them, again, you can go online and see the video. Or you can come and I'm going to do a quick summary of all of them. So again, it'll be fairly quick, but just a summary of that type of stuff. And then in December, we're going to do a wine and cheese night. So again, we're going to flip it up a little bit, change the format a bit. We're going to throw some questions out to you and really just good networking. So this is where we're going to learn from each other, right? So bring some questions if you can start thinking about it. We as a chapter have thought of some questions to kind of get everything started. But really, we want you to bring questions to the group and then kind of group think and like, what is best practice for you? What have you learned? So that type of thing. So again, kind of flipping it upside down a little bit for that. So that's what's coming up next. Okay, for those of you who were here last time, we didn't have a great group last time, but it was still good. I left you with this homework, okay? Again, so the whole purpose of this is to get you to think about how to improve your business and what can you implement. So for those of you who were here before or last month when we talked about corporate finance management, did anyone take anything back and implement anything within their business? Anyone willing to share anything?
One of the things that was brought to my attention again, and I know we need to do better, is applying our revenue better across the year for the services that are being done. So like if there's an enhancement on a contract, not allowing it to be spread across the term of the contract, billing it out in 1 month, not allowing snow revenue to be in our books over 12 months. It needs to be in 5, and just making sure that in our books, the revenue that's tracked matches the work that's being done. So that's something that I'm working on, and that was helpful.
Thank you, Colin. So that's what the term we use. I think I used the term earned revenue versus invoice revenue, right? So that was a good one. And we see that all the time in contractors. They get a 12-month big contract. And if it's heavy green or heavy white season, you got to really kind of just change that around. Like it maybe get invoiced 12 months, right? Like evenly, but when you actually do the work is when you should bring the revenue into your P&L. So again, a little bit more advanced for some contractors, but something you need to work for, especially if you do 12-month big contracts. So anyone else? Colin, thank you very much for sharing. Anyone else have any takeaways from last month? Dave, you weren't here. I was expecting that. You always typically have a bunch of stuff for me. I rely on you for a bunch of feedback. So did you do something? Yeah. Okay. So the other ones that I got some feedback on, just from that night, I think I had 2 emails after the fact. One was on enhancements. So what a percent of enhancements should you sell for maintenance contracts? So we talked about typically like aim for 50 cents on every dollar for enhancements on commercial work. If you do higher end residential, maybe dollar for dollar. So there's a couple people that kind of reached out about that. And then the other one was, the earned revenue versus invoice revenue, I think was the other one. So I think those were 2 that walked away, that people had taken away and asked some clarifying questions. So just so you're prepared, slide is coming. I'm just asking you to think about this for this session as well. Okay, so kind of be prepared so the teacher doesn't catch you off guard. All right, let's move on. So tonight is the Snow and Ice Insurance 101. This is not in that program, and so it's not something that is in the book, but it was the topic that we, the Waterloo chapter did get a big shout out to for asking for this. So what we're going to do is really just going to be able to do this tonight. This is not something I know I know enough to be probably dangerous and give you the wrong information about insurance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Matt. I've known Matt for a bunch of years. When I've talked to you guys in the past, I've always said if you're looking for an insurance broker, lawyer, accountant, please find someone that specializes in as contractors. Okay, took me forever to find Matt. Once I found Matt specializes in our industry. Okay, so Matt's my number one recommendation. If you say to me, hey, I need some insurance, Matt is my number one recommendation for contractors to help out because he knows contractor insurance really, really well. And they have an amazing program for snow contractors, which they're going to talk about. So Matt, thank you so much for coming. And again, it makes me feel better that I don't have to talk all night. So give a warm welcome to Matt as he comes.
Thank you. I'll just test lapel mic working. I was blessed with this mic. Don't have to hold that. But thanks for having me. And I'm kind of the opposite of Grant, actually. I know just enough about snow to be dangerous. So committed to getting my ASM, possibly CSP even. I take this kind of stuff really seriously and kind of niche in this industry as well. So a passion of mine, and I really like helping you guys out. Okay, well, in the meantime, let's keep this interactive. I'm happy to answer any questions as we go, as long as they're kind of on topic. No need to sort of wait until the end and then forget about them after you've had a few drinks. So we'll go through this as we go, and just raise your hand and Grant will show up with the mic, okay? So a few things on the agenda here. We'll go over contracts and legal clauses, very important. That's really where you begin, what you've committed to. Documentation and your duty of care, automation, making your job easier, and technology, education, a few solutions, and then we can do some question and answer. So we'll start here. I saved a few choice words and left it out. I'm glad I did because this is on the internet. But why is snow removal insurance so expensive? So I guess the stigma is that the insurance companies are trying to get rich off you guys. I won't lie, they are for-profit industries, but part of it is money in premium versus money out in claims. So the reality of this, and this is not the popular opinion, I know this is not the crowd for this, but the reality is they're also paying a lot in claims, right? So this has kind of been a vicious cycle for quite a long time. And we're looking to break that. We've had a lot of success since 2019 where we focused on this industry, and proud to say that. But with that comes the right broker, right insurer, right contractors, the right people who are doing the right things, which we'll talk about now. So when it comes to contracts, number one, read them. Don't just look at the dollar value, think everything's great. Yes, you want to grow your businesses, but the money can fall out the bottom of that contract just as quick as it comes in, sometimes even quicker. So read the contracts, understand the wordings, the scope of work, what you're committing to, and quite often what the property owner or property manager is putting on your shoulders. And oftentimes the reality is everything outside the doors is going to end up your responsibility unless you negotiate, right? So understand the wordings and the responsibilities that you're taking, negotiate, and if you'd like, raise your hand with any questions or concerns about that. But when I started talking to contractors about this, a lot of them said, well, if I don't take it, somebody else is. Somebody else is going to come and take the work. So why don't I just take it? It's going to be, the contract is what it is. And what we've seen in the past 6 to 7 years is you guys have made names for yourselves in most cases, and you are able to negotiate. There is that level of respect, but you don't get what you don't ask for at the same time. So a lot of the clients that I work with have gone so far as not adding property managers as additional insureds. Sorry, gonna grab a drink here. But not adding additional insureds, hold harmless agreements. I'm sure you all have them. You've all seen them. You've probably all suffered from them as well. So a couple of things to look at, which we'll get into. But on top of that, if you're doing extra work, taking on extra liability, price accordingly. Okay, so some of that stuff is unavoidable. A lot of the REITs, smart centers, for example, Loblaws, Costco, Amazon, they're unlikely to change their contracts, and that's a reality, but price accordingly. Know your worth. Okay, so duty of care. This is likely the most important thing for you guys to understand. So this is a responsibility of yourself as the contractor that you're taking on within the contract. So when we're looking at defending claims, the first question we ask ourselves is, have you met your duty of care? So duty of care is going to come down to the scope of work as well. It could be that the site is black and wet at all times, right? Oftentimes they go so far as to insinuate that no snow will even touch the parking lot, right? Obviously not reasonable. It's not a reasonable solution. It snows a lot in Canada, not the past year or so, but a few years prior, we've had quite heavy winters. So you guys all know this. But understand this, understand what you're signing up for. Common clauses that I tell most of our clients to look out for is trigger points. They can be all over the place. Again, they could be insinuating basically nothing all the way up to 5 centimeters, 7 centimeters. But it's important to act on that as well and document that. Your level of service. So is this a site that requires service prior to 7 a.m. for people to start work? You're going to need to abide by that. Same thing with churches, schools, hospitals. Understand your service level and what's required of you. This is going to seem silly, but you guys know that sometimes the property owner who doesn't understand snow removal and snow and ice management dictates where the snow pile goes, how the site is serviced, and it's not often the best way to handle that site. So I always encourage clients and contractors to participate in the sort of the plan for attacking snow throughout the season. You need to look out for slopes, drainage. You guys know all these things, but a property owner likely doesn't because they contract out of their liability. Service areas, do loading docks or walkways or certain entrances take special priority? Are you required to patrol or not to patrol? Is it a site-specific patrol where you're actually walking up to a doorway, getting out of your truck, or is it just a general visit, or is it just a general area visit? Very important to understand, because you don't want to be left holding the bag in a claim situation. Okay, and then another is material. Are you only permitted to use, liquids, or only salt, only sand, a mixture of both? Is it up to you? So understand what's required of you, and do your best to meet those targets.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
What would be, to go back to that other slide there, on the patrol side of it, most contracts don't have a patrol like standard clause in there. So as a contractor, for everyone here, what's good due diligence, I guess? Like being out during a storm, like if it's a clear night, nothing's happening, should the contractor still be sending someone out to look at it? Or what's best practice?
Very good question. So in my experience, most claims happen between events. So personally, and this may not be everyone's opinion, but personally, I think it's most important to patrol between events. And really that's because that's to protect your own liability. So I do see quite a lot of contracts where patrol is required, but it's not very specific, because their assumption, in most cases, I would say, would be that you are patrolling on a daily basis, regardless of weather, events, between events, so on and so forth. But to protect yourself, it's a business decision. I like the idea of patrolling daily, but whether you're actually visiting each and every single site or just doing a general visit, maybe you have 4 sites on the same street and you just do a drive-by, there's no squalls, there's likely no issues. But that's a tough question. It's a business decision. What kind of risk are you willing to sort of take on between events? Anybody else have any opinions on that?
To add on to Grant's comment
Mhm.
is, when you're going to do a patrol, documentation is super important. What does insurance companies want to see? What do lawyers want to see? We have
Yes.
we have an abundance of technology in the last decade versus what we had 20 years ago.
Yes.
So what's the standard now in terms of being able to interact with if a claim is being made on you?
Okay, yes, agree. I love all the technology that's in place now. I will say not everyone utilizes it. It's in an upcoming slide. But that's a bit of a loaded question. If the lawyer that we often work with was in the room, he would pull out his list and probably let it scroll out. More documentation is better, but what I would suggest at a bare minimum is time in, time out. First, indicating that it's actually a patrol and not an event. So whether you're using Element, Yeti, Service Autopilot, Titan, making sure that you've input the parameters so that your patrol employees are able to select that it was a patrol and not a specific event. So time in, time out. Pictures are great. Whether or not you did any cleanup, whether there were any issues in the area, and then certainly if you used any material. Does that answer the question? Okay.
I mean,
It's fairly obvious. A lot of this really is, to tell you the truth. But there's 2 parts to this. So one is actually doing those things. And I will tell you, to this day, I still talk to contractors who don't even do paper logs or documentation of any kind. Long gone are those days that you're going to get by with that. Because we all know there's numerous frivolous claims out there, and it's not a matter of if, it's when those come across your way. I think we had another question back here.
part of the ask that the Snow and Ice Committee has sent to the government is that property owners become part of the game. So they'll, if it goes through as we hope, they'll have to do their own snow management plan up every year for the contractor to be put out to tender with all of these in it. So
Yes.
nobody will be guessing what's supposed to be done. And then they're liable as you are liable.
Yes, so part of the ask of the government, and I should clarify, I do participate in the snow and ice sector committee. So part of the ask of the government right now is that during the procurement of contracting the service for your site out is almost flipping the way things are done now, where the property owner just says, I need some service. What can you provide for me? Now they're determining what's an appropriate level of service, what's required on that site, are there any issues, and then pricing it accordingly for you guys to bid on. So they understand their site itself rather than having you take on the liability for the site as the contractor. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, let me realign here. So material permitted. Okay, so most common clauses here, and there's lots of them, but these are the four main ones that I really look for when I'm reviewing a contract for a client. So number one would be hold harmless agreements. So that's essentially what we're talking about contracting out of your liability. In addition to, so that's more of a legal term. In addition to that, these more so reflect your insurance policies and how they're going to respond to a claim. So an additional insured will pick up the defense costs for that property owner, property manager, whoever's being added as an additional insured. Now, with that said, you've got your first party defense, and then you'll have each and every additional defense cost added up. So you can end up with 3 times the cost, 4 times the cost. I've seen contracts that list upwards of 10 additional entities. I've seen the cleaning companies, the security companies, everybody being added on everyone's insurance policy, and it just creates a disaster. I would try and limit this to 1 or 2 maximum, but limit these as much as possible. Preference would be 0. Waiver of subrogation. Does everyone understand this? Has anyone seen this in some contracts? Okay, so this is important. So a waiver of subrogation usually goes hand in hand with an additional insured and primary non-contributory clause, but they mean different things. So a waiver of subrogation means that when you're responding to a claim, whether or not you are negligible or not, you're not allowed now to go and recoup for costs against any of the other parties. So you can no longer subrogate against them to recoup your costs that you've had to pay out of your policy. So subrogation would be to now go sort of behind the scenes and sue back for your costs. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, for some of your losses. Yeah.
So the insurance company sues the other insurance company for the value of the loss.
Right. But with this, you're no longer allowed to, and I see it a lot. It's not a good clause to have in there. Insurance companies don't like it. And again, they're for profit. They want you to be for profit. They don't want to have to lose any of their valuable profit here. Okay.
Can you made a mistake, gave me the mic. We're talking about insurance. Hold harmless clauses,
Yes.
also known as indemnity clauses,
Safe
that
harmless too.
is the biggest issue with all contracts, I find, is the wording of those, and the wording is typically hold harmless, or a whole, yeah.
They can be half a page long.
Well, then certainly they
Yeah.
can be, but it comes down to, there's a couple of words that you want to see in that, and it is if you are negligent. That's right. To the services provided that you are negligent.
Right.
So you're looking for that word in that, it never says that. Now they've started adding, so when you ask them to add in negligence, now they start adding in the word claim to be. So now that throws out the whole thing and you're liable for everything.
Yep.
So you see all kinds of contracts out there, including, and you've heard me talk about this before, the City of Kitchener contract, like City of Kitchener's contractor license has that exact wording in, claim to be negligent. So now you're on the hook for any claim whatsoever. Someone slips and falls in the winter and you were doing the landscaping in the summer, you're on the hook for defending the city. And that's a huge problem. Don't sign them. I'm sure there's people in this room that are signing them.
Yeah. So to clarify that as well, when you're being forced to sign any of these clauses, I like to always have it tied back to your operations, right? So there could be a hold harmless agreement. You don't want it to be too broad that a talented lawyer on the other side is going to bend the law to work to their advantage. So be as clear as you can in these contracts. Make it refer back to the scope of work, which usually is a few lines where the hold harmless is half a page. Make that make sense, right? So the term I like to use when you're reviewing these is XYZ, but only with respect to the operations of the named insured, right? But only with respect to the scope of this contract. So these, again, take a picture if you want, but these are the clauses to look for in contract signing season. Get to know them, get to understand them. Again, this goes back to knowing what you're signing and knowing what you're going to be responsible for. Primary non-contributory, almost self-explanatory. It just means that your policy will respond first and not be supplemented by any other policy. Okay, so it means you're taking on the legal expense yourself and only you. Okay.
So Matt, that one phrase you told us to put in that hold harmless clause, is that just something we can, if we have the contract, can we just like literally just write that in there and like John Henry beside it? Or do we have to like get a lawyer to do it? Like,
Draw it up. I see it all the time. A lawyer is going to tell you, go for some independent legal advice. I would always suggest that, but you'll be paying an arm and a leg for reviewing every single contract that you might not even be winning, right?
The
So-
easiest way to do it, cut out the section, cut and paste, cut out the section of the
Yeah.
Landscape Ontario contract or indemnity clause. It's a mutual indemnity. Which means you're both on the hook.
Dual hold harmless. Yeah.
It's a dual hold harmless or a mutual indemnity.
Yep.
So I had a large contract, federal contract, didn't think that they'd go for it. I told them, I will not sign your contract unless we change this. And I cut and pasted the Landscape Ontario section of the Landscape Ontario contract, sent it to them, and they said, oh, we can do that. And they replaced in their federal contract that goes across Canada, they replaced it with the Landscape Ontario mutual indemnity. It blew me away. I'm like, okay, I get to keep the contract. But because I will walk away from these because you're on the hook.
Yep.
And it'll put you out of business if you're not watching.
This goes back to negotiate. I like this guy. I definitely need to get your name and we'll talk after this, but you know what you're doing. It seems like you've been through it, right? You've been through the ringer. I'm sure you've lost some contracts and then you've got created and negotiated to retain them. Part of the problem really is that property owners, they've been through these issues themselves, right? And then lawyers come aboard, insurance companies come aboard and they say, okay, put all these clauses in. And all that they're really doing is shifting the scales, right? So now they're no longer having these problems. The problems still exist. They're just being reallocated, right? So what Landscape Ontario and our ask of the government is trying to just sort of balance the scales, but you're doing all the right things. I love to hear this stuff. It scares me when people are just blindly signing contracts to keep their revenue up to stay afloat in this economy, right? So protect yourself, protect your bottom line. Yeah,
Not so much a question, but a comment.
Sure.
It's been a couple of years since we've done snow. But when we did have contracts come to us and they wanted us to sign their contract, we didn't pay for the lawyers. That was rule number one, to go through it.
Mhm.
We sent the contract to the insurance company.
Yep.
Insurance company made the edits, came back, and it was tagged to everybody. And 100% of the time, the client changed their contract to appease our insurance companies. Because the insurance just said, we're not backing down, you must change or hold harmless or whatever clause. Because we had one for a school board that was bare pavement and wet at all times.
yep, there you go.
Yeah.
All
and
times.
All times. The YMCA in Waterloo had that in their clause as well. And our insurance company that was the city of Waterloo. And they came back and said, you must have it because that is unrealistic. And the insurance company came back. But insurance, your broker and your policies, wherever you have your policy with, should be able to do that for you at no cost. Don't pay a lawyer.
Yep.
Have them do it and they will negotiate with the person you're trying to get the contract with, or you already have the contract, just changing words.
Most certainly. We do that. We offer that to all our clients as well. And part of what arises is we understand the wordings of the contract and we're able to clarify what is actually being asked. Because another part of this problem is the property owner themselves and the property manager likely don't even understand what they're asking of you. They're just being told our insurance company said, you have to take this contract, sign this contract. The other thing that I've seen is the insurer for the building saying you have to have this in your contract is the very same insurer that's insuring the contractor that says we cannot allow for that to be in a contract. So it's really a double-edged sword. And this is where the communication breakdown really starts to happen. I won't name them, but I've even seen where the insurance company owns the building that is requiring that contract. And the contractor that's servicing that contract isn't able to sign it because they're insured with that insurer. It really gets quite screwed up. But everyone's just really trying to protect themselves. And unfortunately, you guys are the ones in that position right now. But we are seeing a lot of success. And personally, I'll get into our program and how it's performed. But we've seen a tremendous amount of success over the past few years by really focusing on this industry and not really diluting our claims process by handling other types of claims. We have dedicated adjusters and legal counsel that niche in this type of work. Okay, I don't think I started any of this. I think we got off track. Does anyone have any other questions on the previous topic before we move on? Okay. Trigger point, level of service, material. Yes, so sorry, we did go through all this. Next most important thing, pre-season inspections. So when I talk about this to contractors, I understand everybody looks for curb damage. You don't want to be picking up a site that has pre-existing curb damage or a little bit of asphalt damage that you're going to pick up in the spring and have to repair and you know, take on additional issues out of pocket. But that's physical damage. What I like to see, so pre-existing damage is number one. hazards, depressions in the asphalt, right? Downspouts and drainage issues. So when you're walking around a site, look high, look low, look for issues that may not be an issue in the summertime or springtime, but is going to be an issue in the winter. Best time to do a preseason inspection, any after rainfall. So it makes me laugh, but I have pictures. I wish I actually put it up, but I have pictures of birds landing in a pond in the middle of a, I won't say the location, but a large store parking lot near the shopping carts. And so the property owner, who is a big firm, was not repairing that site. What do you think that site's going to look like in the wintertime? It's a skating rink, right? And people are parking there. It's not cordoned off, right? And I'm not even going to ask this, but we all know who's going to take on the responsibility of a claim, right? If something arises. So what can you do? There's not a whole lot that you can do unless you're documenting this. So pre-season, notify the owner of any deficiencies. Probably a 50-50 chance at best that they're even going to respond or acknowledge that they've received this. But any respectable judge, if this does come up in a court case, and you've been harping on this this property owner for years about repairing their site and how you can't take responsibility for this, I doubt that you're going to end up having to pay any type of indemnity for that. You're going to, at best, split, but best case scenario, get out of it. Otherwise, no chance. You're going to end up taking it, and it probably won't even go to trial. They'll refer to the contract, and you'll have nothing to stand on. One of the few names that I do know here, Jason.
So what's that look like? Because if you've signed the contract and it's November 1st, you submit the recommendation, well, asphalt plant's closed in 2 weeks, they're not gonna get it fixed. So how are we wiped clean of any, liability? Like,
Right.
what does it look like? Does it look like, on paper to them? Do they have to sign something? Because you've already signed your contract at that point,
Right.
right? So
Yep.
how
So
are we free and clear?
I wouldn't use the term wiped clean. Like you're not absolving yourself of any liability whatsoever. But again, 50-50 chance you're even getting an acknowledgement, right? So best case scenario, what I would recommend is you have a satellite view or possibly even a drop. We've all seen the SIMA parking lot maps, right? I would recommend having those attached to a contract in the first place so that you can understand what the site is looking like, if there are certain priority areas. And snow pile location, drainage should be on there as well, but then hazards on top of that, any deficiencies, right? So now communicate that back to them and say there are issues here. Oftentimes in contracts, you are responsible for notifying them of any issues anyways. So now just almost recycling that, a weekly, monthly, whatever the intervals are that are in the contract, if in there, but at minimum, I would say beginning of the season, middle of the season, and end of the season, even if you're not getting a response. But what they were saying earlier is we're trying to have a change in the government where the function of even generating this map and a preseason site inspection is the property owner or property manager or consulted out to a consultant and their responsibility. So there is no ignoring it.
So when you do your preseason inspection and do your map, please do a map, put your snow piles on there, all your hazards. We went through that with our clients and we marked the hazards. We marked where ice was forming, if there was puddles. We had them sign the map that
I
they
like it, yeah.
acknowledged the entire thing
Yes.
so that when it did go to court, because, well, go to discoveries. and
Everybody has
it's-
claims.
Yeah,
Yes.
you always have a claim.
Yes.
You can actually say they knew about it and they did nothing. So then they're held more responsible. We've had some properties where somebody has fallen coming off a curb And there's a nice little regulation code. So if the curb is more than so many inches, it's not your problem. It's not a contractor's problem. It's the building's problem. So you can always put it back on the building for the building liability to pay for. And I managed all of our years. Our first year doing snow, I paid the first time. After that, I found a way to get out of all of it.
You learn quick, right?
Yes, absolutely, because you're insurance. But having them sign off on the map, our insurance companies loved it because they printed, they signed, they knew their hazards, they knew their problem areas. And it was their responsibility to fix their property.
Yes. So we encourage the members of our program to do that as well. Year one, almost nothing, less than 10%. And these are not actual stats, but we did have a steady increase. And I would say we're probably upwards of 70 or so percent now. But it was very foreign to property owners and property managers to even sign off on something like that because they know that you're taking the liability, right? So I like that very much. Okay. Any questions on this? There's obviously quite a few more things you should be looking out for, but these are just a few examples. Just anything more than curb damage, please. Because, you know, physical damage is going to cost you a lot less than liability and personal injury. Okay, those are the claims that cost $1 million. Did you want to go for a break? Yeah, okay. Okay, so the way I like to do things is automate it. Use technology, right? A lot of things that we do now, although they're costly, right? There's added costs to this. Technology costs more than a piece of paper or a binder, but it's going to make your life a whole lot easier, and you're going to have consistency and accuracy across the board. So I would encourage you guys to take a look at this bar here. So I've got a couple sheets that Grant can hand out, but I'd be surprised if any of you guys have seen this list before, but I'm willing to bet that more than 70% of you have this list inside of your insurance contracts. So at least in the past 5 years. So if you guys are insured with a domestic, likely not. But if you're insured with Lloyd's, go have a look at your contract. And I'm sure you're going to come up with this exact list, right? I've shared a copy, so please do so. Have a look, and do me a favor. Give me a call if you do have it, because what that means is if you're not following that, the insurance policy that you are paying tens, 50s, hundreds of thousands of dollars for can end up being null and void and not worth the paper it's written on. So these are very important things to note, right? This is what's called a warranty in your insurance contract, and they can deny defending you in a claim if these are not met. Now, it's not to say that you're automatically going to get a denial, but what happens if, you know, you do come up to that $5 million, $10 million claim, and it's going to be a huge court battle, and they start flipping through the contract, and they're like, where's this and this? Okay, you're on your own, null and void, right? So I don't want to see that happen to anyone. Absolutely not. So as I was saying, it blows my mind, but it exists out there. So site logs. This is basically what you've done, and you telling the story of why you were on site in the first place. So a lot of the time I see none. Next, text and WhatsApp. So a WhatsApp group with the entire crew, all in one group. Yes, I'm on site. And you just know that everyone logged in and clocked in for the day. Doesn't tell a lot of a story, right? And definitely doesn't meet this criteria, other than date, at best, right? So what I would encourage is at minimum paper logs. Landscape Ontario has it. It's free. You can download it. It hits the majority of this criteria. You can input the rest. I'd say you're safe with that. What I do like to see, digital site management system, automate it, have it included in all your trucks. There are companies out there like Viasis that have a dash cam, GPS, and you can integrate it with your salt counters. You can integrate it with your sites so that whenever you show up on site, it automatically clocks you in, takes pictures, in some cases takes videos. I like stuff like this, although cost comes with it. So it can be cost prohibitive, but in the worst of cases, use paper and then take some pictures. Most cost effective, in my opinion, is going to be Yeti or LMN, depending on your level of green type of work. You can use it for costing, material tracking, so on and so forth. But I would definitely suggest at least considering the investment into digital site management system. Number 2 is GPS. So even if you're using paper logs, GPS is great, shows you were on site. It's a secondary confirmation. There's also benefits to it. So you'll get a discount on your insurance if you're not already sort of maxed out on your credits. But likely you're going to end up with a discount on your fleet insurance. You're going to end up with a discount on your equipment insurance, right? So if you're installing GPS on your $150,000, $200,000 loaders, $75,000 loaders, I've seen those get stolen. I've seen them get recovered as well, inside and outside of the insurance industry. So I've seen people go and recover their own. Wouldn't suggest that. Call the police. Second is site management integration, time stamping, and finally, ground speed. So we had a case where a loader was on a site and it was equipped with GPS. And in this case, we were served with a statement of claim, multi-million-dollar claim, and we were able to get out of it. I won't give the exact figure, but less than $50,000 when it had started out, multi-million. And one of the things that really helped us was determining that by way of use of an expert, we determined that we had the right equipment, we were using the right material, a well-trained operator, but we weren't overdoing it and trying to get out of the site by just sort of ramming snow piles, right? The site was being managed in an appropriate manner, and we're going the appropriate ground speed. So really helpful. And likely you've probably never heard of that being used in a multi-million-dollar case before, right? Not a lot of loaders are being equipped with GPS. Yeah.
And just a comment. Well, realistically, GPS is probably your second one. Paper's your first.
Mhm.
Your GPS validates your paper trail.
Mhm.
But most guys don't use the GPS properly because you should be hooking that up to your salter so you know when it's on and off.
Yep.
And if somebody really good with the GPS, they can tell you when the plow's on the ground. They have all the wiring in there. It just has to be set up.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
But you gotta
right?
use it
Yeah.
properly. Like when we recommend guys to get GPS, I say, look, at least put your salter on it. The plow, it's an added bonus, but you can do that. And it's recording every time, and it's all color coded on the maps. Especially if you've geogrid all your properties and everything.
Mm-hmm. So what GPS service are you using? That
So. Mhm. I've had him for 20 years.
yeah.
Most of the systems have it built into it. It's just they shouldn't be charging anything extra because it's already there.
Yeah.
Geotab.
Geotab. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been paying the same rate for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Hasn't changed.
Right. And is that a OBD2 module? I've heard of Geotab
Yeah,
quite often, but
they plug right in now.
yeah, no one's ever told me about plow up, plow down.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the wirings over there, they just records.
Yeah.
Most of the guys that come into my yard, I get them, they put the salters right into them, right off. It's a matter of splicing to one of the control wires for the salter. And I
Okay.
tell everybody, just whatever activates your auger spinner kind of thing, don't put it on for just the idle. You have to pick up the right wire, but it'll tell you, you can calibrate then how much salt you're putting on as well. Do the quick math set.
I
have
like
a
this guy too. Calibration. Right on. All right. Good stuff. That's great. So that all comes down to sort of reviewing and understanding the wiring diagram. So bonus points, I'll say for that, taking it upon yourself to make the equipment work for you. That's great. The break was actually a good thing because I really enjoy the conversation. Definitely my favorite part of it, the question and answer. I could talk about this topic all day, but what I realized is I'm 12 slides through like 30. Okay, so we're gonna fly through the rest of these. We've kind of jumped around and answered a lot of questions, but that's my fault for making it interactive. Okay, so but on the other hand, it's great to see that you guys are doing a lot of the right things, right? So suggestion: get back in snow, or sell your equipment to some of these guys since it's all wired nicely. Okay, so GPS almost a must these days. There's plenty of discounts as well from an insurance perspective. Plus, let's talk about theft mitigation as well, recovering your vehicles, high theft. Good idea. Okay. Next, weather tracking. We all know the weatherman is the only job that, or the only guy that can keep his job after being wrong so often. But what's important to us as landscape and snow removal contractors is understanding that when a claim arises and you go gather this data, it's 100% perfect. It's correct. But when you're planning, you're dispatching, you're planning what you're going to do, how you're going to handle an event, you're going off projections and you're basing your operations off projections. Sometimes there is nothing in the forecast. So why would you be dispatching? So a site that says should be black and wet at all times, how are you supposed to dispatch and handle that site if nothing's in the weather, right? So collecting weather data prior to events and retaining that data rather than going back and trying to retrieve it after an event, right? Because that's what claimant counsel will be using when you're defending yourself. Okay, so this tells a big part of the story when you're talking about why or why not you've dispatched. Okay. Next, we talked about calibration. Very important. Know your quantities. Know what you're putting down. It's good for your bottom line. It's good for budgeting and quoting sites, but it's also good for your defense, service records, and certainly calibrating your equipment. What I recommend is calibrate your equipment at least once a year, or if you've repaired it. And I know you can all calibrate your equipment. I've done it, and if I can do it, you guys can certainly do it. Communication. We talked about this, communicating with your PMs. So deficiencies on site in your site map. but also incoming storms and delays post-storm, the storm's over. It's really good just to have that open line of communication. So if you believe a storm is going to be, 12 hours, let them know, because now you've notified them. It's not safe to go out in your worn out Birkenstocks. It's better to wear some boots, right? Just part of due diligence. Not required, but definitely suggest it. So coming back to, like I said, remember those logbooks. So this is right out of an insurance contract. So contractor, you guys are the insured. So it reads, the insured will complete in accordance with the details set out below logbook records for all work it carries out with regards to snow removal activities and the preparation of surfaces to deal with adverse weather conditions, and will retain each record for a minimum of 5 years, and to be available to respond to a claim arising from that work. Most important here, failure to comply with this condition will result in an absence of coverage for any claim to which a logbook record would have been relevant. So that means it's not an automatic denial, but you bet when you get into those multi-million-dollar claims and they're asking, were you on site at this time when the claimant says that they fell? Or was it this time? Is it a range, right? It's better to be specific. And again, we'll go to the question in a minute, but I've seen claims where they can't even get the location of the fall, slip and fall correct, let alone the time, right? So I've seen the time, the location change 3, 4, 5 times in the middle of court. And these are, sworn testimony. So it's better to have your story and your records down pat.
Why 5 years? When the law right now says less.
Yes, so it used to be 2 years less a day for the notification period, right? And I assume you're going to be leading into Bill 118, 60 days, right?
No, I'm not saying you got 5 years up there. I'm like going, that seems, you're supporting frivolous claims.
Yeah. So again, this is just out of an insurance contract, but any claim can exceed 5 years easily, right? That you're defending,
Yeah, but
right?
you've been served in 2 years. Why would you keep, what I'm saying? If
Well,
you've
why-
been served when you're supposed to be served properly, if you're given notice, so you pull all those records aside for court purposes and hand them over to the lawyers and everything. You're saying to save everything. I'm like going, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So,
Although we have everything for like 7 years usually.
yes. So again, 5 years is just something that the insurance companies have come up with. But I will tell you, Bill 118, even 2 years less a day as a notification period, it can exceed that easily. So let's say you were a contractor or even a subcontractor, maybe. This will make more sense. This will be relevant. If you're a subcontractor and you're notified 6 years later, right? But you're saying, oh, I purged my records. Doesn't mean you're out of the claim, right? So this is just the insurance companies trying to make sure that they have at least their records that they can stand on, right? Again, I agree with you. If you're served 5 years after a claim, you're going to be pretty upset.
That's what I don't understand. So you can still serve someone 5 years after, but the law says 2 less a day.
Yep. You can serve. So even Bill 118 you can still be served and you can be dragged into a claim. The notification is one party. So if the property owner gets the notification, a judge can still drag you into a claim 6 years later, even though prior to Bill 118, the common practice was 2 years less a day. A judge can overturn that. If you read Bill 118, it also says directly on that at the bottom that it refers something to the legal courts being able to exceed the 60-day notification period. but listen to this. So you guys had referred to a school board prior to this slide. And any minor gets up to the age of 18 plus 2 years less a day. So 5 years isn't even going to be close enough, right? Ideally, you're getting this communication well in advance of that time period, but a lawyer or someone who's diamond to diamond, right? Good question. Probably this guy. So, Bill 118. So again, the general practice is 2 years less a day, but it can significantly exceed that. Even Bill 118, which we may as well lead into that now. Bill 118 can exceed that as well. So this is just notifying a party. So it could easily go down to, okay, Walmart has been notified. So now Smart Centers sends it to Crawford. Crawford notifies you, but you've not notified a subcontractor. Who knows? Maybe they subbed it out to someone else and now the contract is diluted 3 times over. And by the time you actually find out who did the work, 4 years later, right? And Diamond doesn't necessarily jump on claims and deal with them quickly as well. And this is not to badmouth Diamond. It's just the way the legal system works, right? They're not really rushing to close a lot of claims. This is just how the world works in the legal system. Okay, so Bill 118 down to 60 days. We really like this as insurance companies, but I will say it's not necessarily the silver bullet. It hasn't just taken insurance rates and decreased them significantly, because a claim that is legitimate or a claim that has gone through the steps, litigation, discovery, so on and so forth, can still last 5-6 years, can still last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But what I like about this is now you're not receiving claims generally 2 years. Like I used to see them a week before 2 years consistently, right? Where now this process is sped up and we do have a general idea of how a contractor is performing. We're able to jump to our defense and prepare our records so that we can defend claims efficiently. So this doesn't make claims cheaper, but it makes us more effective in defending them, which in the long run will likely decrease your cost of insurance because indemnities aren't being paid out in significant amounts. Any other questions or feedback on Bill 118? Maybe how have you guys seen maybe it decrease your insurance rates at all? You guys feel the same as me? At least you have a better picture of what you should be. Yeah. Yeah.
We drop our insurance and that the property owner plus harm.
You go first.
Yeah. Well, we'll let the retiree go. We'll bring him back from retirement. So one thing I say will help is well, I would say is more effective even than Bill 118. Not that there's anything wrong with Bill 118, but education. So oftentimes you'll hear, it's an uneducated class of business where it's not a trade, right? And a licensed trade. So electricians, plumbers, they're held to a certain standard. What I like to see is taking that out of the equation, right? So a couple things here. So CSP, ASM, they're a little bit harder to acquire and get, but they help you with your business, right? And more importantly, they help you with your legal cases because now you're held to a higher standard, an undisputed standard. There's some easier ones to get. Smart About Salt also benefits, right? You're understanding the science behind the material you're putting down, how it reacts, when it's effective, when it's not effective. I like Greenius as well. So it does a lot of your safety training, right? A lot of that's required. A lot of that course is required by the law anyways, right? You've got to make sure that your staff are not lifting heavy weights, they're staying hydrated, you know, they're operating within their job description and they're trained to do so. But most importantly, what I would say is LO is now coming out with an accredited snow program. And this is significantly more comprehensive than any of these 3 courses listed above, but also encompasses those. So LO's snow program goes all the way from safety training and all the way up to understanding your business and contractual language, kind of the stuff that Grant would be doing as a consultant, right? So it's training yourself and your staff to those levels. But the one that I really like is there's a course for a preseason site inspection that is not course 1 to 5. It's a separate course that can actually be taken by property owners as well, so that they're able to do their own preseason site inspections.
Matt, when's the LO one coming out? What's the timeline on that one?
So the GROW program is actually supporting, I think it was seven of the chapters, 7 cities, yes. Yeah, so 7 cities to go through the first course in October. And from what I understand as well, the legacy exemption exam is going to be able to be challenged likely in late October as well. So the legacy would bring you up to what's called a level 3, which would be like a dispatch or supervisor type of a level. So good stuff coming down the pipeline from LO. So now, with all that stuff that you've likely heard before, how does that come into practice? How does that benefit you really? So, A, be with the right broker, right insurer, right contractor, doing the right things, right? So we need to sort of align things. And what we do is we work with contractors that we like to sort of perform an audit, ask these questions. We like to work with the quote unquote best in class operators that are going to commit to bettering themselves and making sure that they do have a defense strategy and have that stuff in place. So with that stuff comes insurance credits. So you want some cheaper insurance? Speak to us about, essentially everything we spoke about leading up to this. But what we do is we're industry involved. We're involved in the landscape snow and ice sector. We're involved in training. We've networked with a handful of experts, Grant included. What we do is we don't sort of say what you need to do without supporting you and sort of leaving it that. So what we've done is we've invested in contract language. We've invested in uniform documentation as well that we can provide to you. You're not required to use it, but at least you have something free of charge. But what's most important is like-minded and qualified members. We have a dedicated defense team for adjusting, legal, and broker. So myself and ASM, Smart About Salt certified. We've taken all the courses, everything we can do to understand your business and what's important to you guys and what's important to meeting your scope of work and duty of care. Okay. And then program design. So we do have a standard sort of retail program, right? That's like insurance that you would have now, but with preferred and competitive rates if you guys are doing the majority of these things. So we've built relationships with underwriters who trust our underwriting skills and what we're going to look for, because we want to ensure that you guys remain profitable, and so does the insurer. But something unique that we've done is we've built an SIR program. And so what we've done, I guess, is taken some of the best in class operators and set them up in what's almost like a mutual. And the best way to describe it is typical insurance has two layers. One would be the deductible, and then one would be the insurer, right? So you may have a 10,000 or 25,000, seen even $100,000 deductible. Everything after that, the insurance will pick up for legal costs. So what we've done is we've taken a trust fund, which each member contributes to, and we've sandwiched that in the middle. So the insurer is okay with taking significantly reduced rates because they're only there for catastrophic reasons, or if we have a significant amount of claims in any policy term. So where there was once 2 layers of protection, there's now 3. So there's the individual member deductible, and then there is right now it's a $1.75 million trust fund. It does vary year to year, but $1.75 million. And then if that is completely exhausted, then the insurer will step in. Individual deductibles are $10,000 for landscape and $20,000 for snow removal claims. And that is inclusive of legals and adjusting. So how do we protect this fund, right? So this is the most important part. Think of yourselves as now basically a mini insurance company. So you want qualified, respectable contractors that are operating in a similar fashion to you, performing and keeping that trust fund safe by not spending on frivolous claims or increased insurance costs because of lack of documentation, right? So each member will capitalize at the beginning of the term, right, in proportion to their revenue. And what we do is we invest that fund into investment strategies, so you benefit from the interest. And then the beauty to this program is it's a trust fund. So whatever's not utilized and paid out in claims will be returned back to you. It's not recorded as profit to the insurers, right? So the better you perform, the more money stays in your pocket. It does typically take anywhere between 4 to 5 years to close out all claims received by all members. But what starts to happen is you end up getting checks back that are going to help you pay for your insurance moving forward. Okay, so final step here would be if we were to completely exhaust or dissolve that trust fund, the insurer is still there to assist with any type of catastrophic claim. So you're not stepping into the shoes of the insurer completely, but if we do come across any issues, they do assist. Okay, so up to a $5 million policy limit. Any questions on how that operates? It's completely unique, and it's a little bit difficult to explain. But any questions on that? Has anyone heard of this in the past? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are the requirements to be a part of the SIR program?
Okay, so
How much like snow volume do you have to have? What do you have to have in place to be able?
okay, that's the right question. So I can tell you've shopped your insurance in the past. how it works is, has absolutely nothing to do with your volume whatsoever. It's performance based. So when we built the program, we did partner with an insurer and get their requirements as well. So a few of the things that they wanted were aligned with the logbooks that you saw previously. But there are also member interests as well. So the members have gathered we have an AGM and we do have quarterly meetings and we gather in a room like this and everyone kind of gets together and sets out the guidelines. So a couple of the guidelines that have been set by the group are either a GPS or digital site management system so that you're sort of double checking. We have a journal that assists with sort of telling your story of why you did or did not dispatch. With that comes event numbering as well as weather monitoring. So weather for the upcoming day and also the previous day. So you're able to tell a story of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Calibration is one of them. Really that's it for the requirements. But when it comes to, and the reason I can tell you shopped your insurance before is the volume, right? So oftentimes you were likely told you need to do at least $1 million of revenue, right? And sometimes even a max of 30 or 25% snow, with the remaining being landscaping or some other type of work. So we don't have any requirements like that. We can do up to 100% snow. And it doesn't matter your volume as long as you're meeting the criteria of the group. And what we do is an annual, so we do a entry audit by our adjuster. He'll review everything you're doing, making sure that you're meeting those requirements, you're tracking your records properly, you're documenting properly, you're doing pre-season site inspections, so on and so forth. And then he'll make a recommendation to the group. They'll vote to add you in because they have a financial interest in it. And then each year annually, we work with Nextra actually to perform our compliance audits. And then you'll be marked on compliance annually. Does that kind of answer the question? Okay. Sorry for a little bit of rambling there, but it's really important stuff to the groups.
Remember,
It's just based on an insurance rate. So we have a rate for snow and a rate for landscaping.
but then you have a deductible of $20,000.
20,000 for snow and 10,000 for landscaping. Yep.
What's the expected return on premium from insurance perspective as a percentage of claims?
Okay, so that's hard to say because it really depends on the claims we receive, right? So
Well, you
If-
talk about $1 million claims,
Mhm.
right? I mean, that's a big number, right? You know, when you talk about $5 million policy limit, that's a lot of money. So I just, you know, when we look at it, we ask that question because they want us to be profitable. So we expect them to say, what's your expected return on premium? And then let's work together to see how we can mitigate costs tracking against that premium. So, you know, you can target certain customers, you can target contracts, you can target different things when there's shared information. So it's a pretty basic question.
yes, so the return on premium really depends on what types of claims, how many claims, and the severity of those claims. Also, the performance of that contractor that was servicing that contract. So, for instance, one term we could receive 50 claims in a winter, another term we could receive 15, right? So that's gonna dilute. Right.
That's pattern. That's not actual dollars spent or dollar. Like, I mean, you can mitigate pattern, you can identify patterns. It's just a matter of dollars, you know, it's sharing the information of dollars spent, right? Like I listen, I get it.
Yeah.
You guys are in
No.
business. You made that statement. Insurance companies are in business, but I think it's a
Yeah.
fairly it's definitely worth a question for anybody in the room when they're talking to their broker and the people carrying the paper.
Yeah, I can give you a statement on a most recent policy term. So we returned about 45% of that SIR trust fund. But again, you not necessarily, right? If it in a perfectly priced scenario, your return would be nothing, but you wouldn't be investing that money up front in the first place, right? So if it's priced effectively, you wouldn't be returned that 45%, but you wouldn't have had to pay it and put it in the trust fund in the first place, right? But there is that little bit of check and balance. But that silo could have just been blown out just as easily by a fatality or something like that. It's really specific to each claim. But I'd be safe saying 30%, anywhere between 30 to 50%. I think I'd be happy with, and I think our contractors would be certainly happy with as well.
The one thing that we like about the program, why we recommend it so much, is it's built by contractors. So as a contractor in the program, you actually have to be engaged with it. You can't just be passive. Like, you guys are taking the recommendations from the contractors themselves.
Yep.
And then it's the contractors constantly trying to improve, and then only bringing in contractors that are going to do that, right? Because if you bring in a bad contractor, it's going to affect the return. So that's why I like the program.
Yep.
It's self-regulated almost. So
Yeah.
that's why I like it.
We do have subcommittees as well. So when we're talking about claims, we do have, our adjuster will take authority, right? So settlement authority. I'm going to assume you've had a claim in the past. Okay. So you're right. So, and I'm sure you probably weren't happy with the outcome, right? So likely how it occurred, I'm not going to say it definitely occurred like this, but likely you sent in a statement of claim. They asked you for a few documents. You probably didn't hear from them too much until it came to a discovery, litigation, or worst case scenario, they were just like, hey, we settled the claim. Here's your deductible. You owe it to us within 30 days, right? Very little to no involvement whatsoever. And if you were sort of trying to get them to understand that, yes, I did have this documentation, this is why it makes sense, they might not have even understood that, right? So what we do is our group of contractors is similar to this size. We meet quarterly, but the contractors have elected a subcommittee called the Claims Committee, as well as the Membership Committee. So Membership Committee helps decide and vote on addition of new members. Claims Committee will work on reviewing claims that are into that trust fund and over and above the members' individual deductible, and they'll work with settlement authorities. So our adjuster cannot just go and settle a claim for $50,000, right? They may only get settlement, they may request settlement authority for $40,000 or $50,000. And our claims committee can say, you know what, we reviewed the records. We believe that this should be settled for $7,500. You have authority for $7,500. He cannot exceed that. He operates at the direction of the group and the contractors. Yeah, so it's really unique, but it seems to be working, right? You guys are the experts, not the suits.
So how successful is this? Like, and maybe you can give us a little bit of backstory of how long this program's been going on?
Yeah.
And what percentage of contractors would be into this? And does every insurance company have this kind of program, or? Because I mean, I've heard of this, but I think it's a relatively new or newer concept.
Yes. So you've probably heard of a captive, right? In the past, there was Landscape Ontario did perform a feasibility study. And from what I understand, it came up that it wouldn't have worked out at that time, at least. So as far as I understand, we're the only SIR-based program for landscape and snow removal in Canada. if not all of the US. I don't know of any other ones. I know of other industries that do have SIR-based programs, but we run that as well. So as far as I know, it's really only us. There are captives as well. That's a little bit of a different thing. It's got offshore or even out of province money. They have their own lawyers, they have their own finance. That really is its own insurance company. But as for success for this, we did one that's very, very similar in design for the elevator industry. And that has been running, I believe, since 2004 or so. Very profitable, still running, still under management by us. And this program has been running since 2019.
And what kind of percentage of the elevator company is theirs?
It's, we're kind of, it's apples and oranges at this point, but at the time when it was set up, it was very similar to you guys. They were paying out millions of dollars in claims, but there's a few things that they have that this industry doesn't. Most importantly, being a standard of care. So an actual standard that is enforced by the government or an authority having jurisdiction. You don't quite have that. It's a little bit of, I'll call it the wild, wild west, where it's just pointing fingers. No, this is your responsibility. No, it's your responsibility, right? So it's a little bit harder to sort of put up the gates and narrow down who should be paying for what at this time. But again, we paid about 45% back on the most recent policy term that we closed. And that was this year, plus the invested interest.
How many
So very-
contractors are in the program right now?
32 separate companies. Yeah.
Okay, just a little question. So you have a membership committee that decides whether a contractor can come into this.
Yes.
Can they also vote that contractor off the island?
Um,
If they're, because
they,
unfortunately, things happen. So we've seen it all. We've been in business 30 years. So a contractor may get divorced. And then they could care less what happens to the business because she wants half of it or vice versa. So we've seen things go right downhill in that kind of sense. So I just want to know if somebody goes into this program and they think it's secure, like getting security for the insurance. What if there's a contractor that is not upholding their part? Do they get voted off the island?
they do. They do.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are compliance audits, right? And again, not to go over this over and over again, but there are minimum requirements to the group, right? And really, yeah. And so those have to be met, or else you're not only putting your own investment at risk, you're putting the entire group's investment at risk, right? So yes, they can be voted out. We can hear complaints as well, there can be any number of reasons why dismissal of a member can arise, but there'd have to be a very, very good reason for them to be removed by the program. This isn't, politics, right? Where it's, okay, we don't like them anymore. If they're still performing, they're still eligible for the group. It really is performance-based. We do take the claims, yes, the claims committee, but also the membership committee. Claims committee sees the claims, right? And they're seeing, was proper documentation there? Was the duty of care met? Were there any issues? Is there anything that should have been implemented that would have provided for a better outcome, sorry. So we do take their opinions very seriously, members very seriously, the adjuster, and also Nextra. But at the end of the day, we get the final say, right? So we kind of hear complaints and issues that arise, and then we make a decision from there. Any other questions?
Okay, Matt, thank you so much for that. Matt's contract contact information is here. I'm assuming you can stick around for a couple minutes if people have some questions for you
Of course
afterwards.
I can. I think I've committed to a few conversations after
For sure,
this,
yeah.
so yeah.
So, any takeaways? Anyone want to share some takeaways tonight? What maybe what they've learned, or again, kind of something that you'd be willing to verbally commit to doing something in your business for the next 30, 60, 90 days? Anyone want to volunteer? Anything you've learned? Oh, question online. What was the question online? Does anyone have? Okay, so the question online. Okay, so yeah, so the Viasis, whoever's online, welcome. Thanks for showing up. Viasis actually is a local company to Waterloo. So if you even just search for them, they'll actually come and install it for you. So that's when the software's, a lot of the other GPS softwares I know that are out there, it's pretty easy to install. Or you can get a lot of the dealerships will install it on that type of stuff, but. Sorry, what was that? Okay. Okay. Sam Sarah is up and coming, so, okay. All right, that's a good question. Anything else anyone's gonna take away from tonight?
I thought the 5 years was a real eye opener. Like, not that I haven't saved all my records forever, but it still seems convoluted to me, but the 5 years, it would be super important. I guess my understanding, like I've been lucky enough to never get one yet. So, knock on wood, maybe this year's the year. Hooray. But, keeping all that information and separated, and then also, keeping a good rapport with your staff, because, that's important too. If they were the ones providing that service during that time, and they've left and they're angry with you or whatever. So there's that little thing that kind of in the back of your mind when you hear about this kind of stuff.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? Again, Matt will stick around. Again, like I said at the beginning of it, we're here to recommend people that can help your business, and this program can help your snow business for sure. So, again, we just thank you so much for tonight. I appreciate it. I think we do have a raffle draw before everyone goes. Again, I think there's a couple slices of pizza left. Please take them with you. And if we don't see you, we will see you in 4 more weeks to do a recap of what's going on. So thank you much. Thank you everyone for being online, and we'll go from there.